that, because thank you. All right. Grand Rising. Yes. Let's try that again. Grand Rising. You got it. So last Sunday, we kicked off not only our monthly theme, but our yearly theme, which is entitled Grand Rising. And we talked about how we can use this greeting of Grand Rising, similar to as we would Good Morning, but as a reminder to wake up, to rise again, spirit, soul, body, as one whole thing, and to greet each other, not just in a good way, but in a grand way, yes? Yes. So today, we are continuing with this theme of grand rising and new beginnings, beginning again. It's January. It's that time where all of a sudden we go to the gym when we hadn't for the last 8 months, or we commit to some new healthy habit. And we talked last week about how not just setting New Year's resolutions or intentions, but actually integrating those micro moments of mindfulness, those micro moments of living our intentions, so that we don't have some big, grand thing that can be easily overwhelming and then we just stop. But we can find those baby steps to integrating more spiritual practice in our life and being more awake, aware, and conscious. And throughout the day, it's as easy as hitting that reset button, taking that breath, and beginning again. So today we are going to be talking a little bit and honoring the birth and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As we know, tomorrow is MLK Day, and how this ties into this idea of newness, of beginning again. So not only doing our own spiritual work, having our own kind of reset, but as King brought to our collective consciousness, there are many things in the world that it's time to hit a reset. It's time to find a new way of being, of doing life, and creating structures and systems such that we can all thrive, yes? So we honor Dr. King and talk about the qualities that he embodied so that we all can choose as well to wake up each day and embody these ideals of equality, of freedom, of justice for all. Through Dr. King's impact, he was a very controversial figure at his time. And I think sometimes we have short-term memories when it comes to history. Like, it really wasn't that long ago. And when he was saying the things he was saying at the time, some of you may remember, there were death threats. It wasn't like everyone now that's like, yay, King, 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 right? For his time, he was pushing the envelope, and with that, when anyone is really guiding our collective consciousness to its growing and leading and expanding edge, he was out there on the skinny branches. And not everyone was rooted in where he was going, and yet that did not stop him, nor should it stop us. Nor should we be so complacent to say that, oh, that happened in the 60s and we're good now. Look around, y'all. There is so much work to be done. A layer was healed and revealed. An evolution of consciousness occurred, and we are here on the precipice of another paradigm shift in our collective consciousness where we are seeing such separation in the world. And when this comes up, this separation, this discontent, it is knowing it is there because something new is ready to be birthed. But what we see not only in our own life, but in the collective, is when some new way of being is ready to be expressed, everything unlike it gets really loud, right? think about it in your own life. Have you okay, I'm really going to heal my relationship with lack, with my finances, with my health, with my self-doubt, whatever it may be, right? We start doing our affirmations. We do our spiritual practices. We're doing our journaling, all the things. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're slammed in the face with everything unlike that truth. And it's because literally we are starting to vibrate at a different place, and there's this dissonance that occurs with the old way of being, the old patterns. And so all of a sudden we see it when we didn't see it before because we were just in it, right? Does that kind of make sense, right? We were just kind of living in this way of unworthiness, of separation, of lack and doubt, and then we start to raise our consciousness, and all of a sudden this looks like and it's the opportunity to speak truth to the illusion, to know the truth to all that used to be comfortable, and say, no, this no longer serves me. Y'all, we did the burning bowl a few weeks ago, and we let go of that ish. So we are letting it go, and we are rising up to a grand rising, a new beginning, one where we are awake and conscious. And where we are doing this not only for ourselves, but for the entire collective. So as we rise and we take a stand for those values, as we do our own inner healing, we can be in the place to be able to sustain our justice work, to be able to speak from a place of knowing, because we have transformed. We have overcome our own doubts. We know what it's like to look at the false evidence appearing real and to speak truth and continue to move forward. And I'm not saying we've got it all done and that we're somehow healed, right? No, it's a journey. We're always uncovering, we're always growing and expanding. So, when we look at what King stood for, I think it's curious sometimes, because I bet that today there are modern day heroes, much like King, that are being met with hatred and vitriol, and their message being met with resistance, right? If not pure hatred from a place of fear, really, because people don't like change, and especially those who have benefited from the systems and the ways that things have been. They don't want to see the change if it's comfortable. And instead of judging that, how can we be compassionate for that, right? How can we realize, I don't like to change either. I've been comfortable in certain ways in my life, and now I have to look at things and realize, my comfort has come at the cost of someone else. Now, when I didn't know that, cool. Now that I know that, there's that dissonance. So instead of judging the others for their resistance, perhaps we can look within and see, there's a part of me that can relate and that can understand why that discomfort can be challenging. I'm not saying that we're saying it's okay, people's violence and anger and hatred towards the shift that needs to come, but when we meet it with as much anger and resistance as those are meeting their own discomfort, the vibration, the energy, the feeling, the motivation behind it is the same. It's not love, it's fear. So how can we have compassion for that and still know that things have to shift? So to keep moving forward with what we are called to be, do, and become, motivated by our own values and what we desire for the world. this is a great opportunity to greet this new shift in consciousness, this new paradigm, with love. It's an opportunity to place our energy towards the shifts that we are seeing in the world with love, with our consciousness, but also with our financial support, with our energy, with our time, with our talent, giving towards the people and the organizations that are contributing to our collective grand rising. Because today is a new day, and just as we look back at the times in the past of the various justice movements and revolutions that have occurred, history has its eyes on us. Ernest Holmes is the founder of the Science of Mind teaching, which is our core teaching here at Center for Spiritual Living. And he says, we cannot be born of the Spirit unless we do the will of the Spirit. And the will of the Spirit is goodness, peace, mercy, justice, and truth. It is conscious union with God. So again, just a reminder, anyone that may be hearing this for the first time, those of you online, when we say God, God is just a word. God is spirit, life, universe, love, whatever word works for you. But what we know is that there is only one energy, one presence, and we are one with it. And therefore, that desire for goodness and peace and mercy and justice and truth lives within us. And when we look around, we can see that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere because we are one. And even those that may think they are not affected by certain isms, racism, sexism, I could go on and on. But anyway, those who feel like they may not be at effect of that, it's just simply not true because we are one. And the disservice we do, even if you look at the patriarchal culture, by lifting up men in this certain way and saying you have to be this certain way, strong, not feel your feelings, whatnot, that is a disservice to the collective. So there's such an opportunity for healing in today's everyday, the now moment, right here, right now. So the invitation is to participate in this collective grand rising and to do our own healing work and begin to look at some of perhaps our internal bias, whether it be through gender, sexuality, sexual expression, gender expression, racial equality, all of these things, and Dr. Holmes didn't necessarily explicitly talk about these things, but you have to look at the context and the time, just like you have to with any spiritual teachings or sacred text. And from his perspective as, a white kind of wealthy man in the 50s, he didn't necessarily have as much awareness before the internet as well of all the injustices. So we can only kind of imagine, but we can glean from his core teachings that if he were here today, he would be on the side of equality and justice for all. Yes? And kind of during his time, there was more of a reckoning and an awareness of justice around race. And he stood very firmly for racial equality. He had a very close relationship with a minister that he trained, Reverend Pearl Wood, and she was known in the movement as Mother Pearl. She served at the Triangular Church in Los Angeles. And, the center remains predominantly an African-American congregation that is rooted in her lineage. And Holmes was there to present the charter of this center. And this was pretty radical in those times, if you think about it, right? And he, there's still some organizations today that don't even ordain women. So just think about that. So back in the 50s, Ernest Holmes chartering a church with a black female minister. And he was there. He was there to give his yes, right? And he said to the congregation that day, if she's your mother, then I am your father. And so showing, right, that we are all in this together. So many of us can say, yes, we lead from love. I choose love. But if we are not doing a little bit of deeper internal work around our unconscious bias, then we might be missing the mark or unconsciously harming by not even knowing it. So leading from love really requires a willingness to see the uncomfortable truths and then bring them forward to heal, not just ignore them. Same, like everything I say, y'all, think of it as the collective and the internal, right? So even within ourselves, when something comes up and we have that, oh, we don't just ignore it. In order to heal, we must reveal, and then transformation can truly occur. So we often talk about truth with a capital T to distinguish this idea of universal truth and this idea of truth as far as reality, right? So there's kind of the difference between what's true, what's fact, or what is true with a capital T. But our focus on truth with a capital T sometimes can minimize the reality of those who are living in an experience other than that of peace and harmony and having their basic needs met. Like their truth, their reality is very different than what we know is the eternal truth and possibility for all. And this is, again, where there's a fine line. Because some people could look at these teachings and say, well, it's in their consciousness, or they need to change something and do their practices in order to create a different experience. We collectively create our reality. So if our siblings are struggling, it is just as much ours to do, to raise up and to highlight and to focus and to tend to what is needed, not out of a place of pity, but out of a place of this experience of inequality is a reflection of our collective consciousness, not just individually, but all of our individual consciousness put together. If you had this big bowl of soup and you put all the ingredients and you looked at it, it would, although there's a number of us sprinkling in a lot of love, there's also a bunch of other stuff in there, and that's what we're seeing in the world. So our opportunity is take responsibility by doing our work for the collective, but also not just putting it on the individual to lift themselves up without seeing how we are perhaps contributing to the very system that is making it impossible for them to lift themselves up, right? It kind of, like there's so many levels to this. So if Martin Luther King was alive today, I would bet that he would raise awareness to many of the issues. One example, particularly, if you look at what he spoke of in the beloved community, which he brought to life, although it was actually Josiah Rice, I believe, who kind of came up with these tenets. But one of them is this idea of policing, right, and the kind of over-policing and how we need to shift that, as well as this, if we look today, King, I'm sure, would highlight the mass prison industrial complex, right? Here's some facts. When Dr. King was killed, the amount of people incarcerated in the U.S. was 188,000, 188,000. Today, there are approximately 2 million. Have we all of a sudden gone, immoral as a collective, and there's so many criminals that are, no. Like, what is going on here? The United States imprisons a larger percentage of black people, hear this, than South Africa at the heart of apartheid. We need to wake up. We need to look at our country, y'all. If we don't look at these things, we can walk through the world and say, oh, we had a black president. Ooh, enough of that. So, no other country in the world imprisons so many racial minorities. And many believe that the prison industrial complex is a form of modern day slavery, right? There's a documentary called The 13th. I believe it's still on Netflix, maybe other places. If you're interested in this, even if you're not, I invite you to get curious and watch that movie. Many of us, so many people believe, right, that it's modern day slavery, and I won't go into it, watch the movie, but you can see why. It's obvious. And then we say, well, what can I do about this? What's mine to do? So as individuals, as a spiritual community, how can we come together to participate in this grand rising and to co-create the beloved community in a world that works for everyone? Well, what we know is that in each and every moment, we are always at choice. There's a new beginning that right here, right now, is creating the next moment. So first of all, to stand in our power and to realize that those who benefit from the system kind of can control the narrative that it's all individual in order for those of us who perhaps are privileged to think, well, that's not mine to do. Did you kind of follow that track, right? So we, as conscious beings, always have to be on top of the messages we're hearing, what we're noticing, even the very thought of, well, what's mine to do? How can I, this is so huge. One baby step. Instead of just saying, I don't know, one baby step, awareness is the first key. And then maybe you watch the film and you get excited and you start talking to other people and you're like, well, let's see. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are organizations doing good work right here in our own community. We highlight one every month, yes? So we can come together and support each other. Maybe, and I'm going to talk about this later in an annual meeting, but maybe there is some more outreach that we can do as a community, that Ahava can really show up as a force of love, because we know love is always the answer. Those of us, especially physically in this area, what are we being called to support? How can we treat and move our feet, know the truth, do our spiritual work, but then show up as the force for love as well? Motivated, inspired by the vision that we want, not inspired by sorrow or pity or lack, right? We have to maintain the consciousness of wholeness, of equality, and take the step, get out there and do something to make a difference. We're studying this month the book, The 4 Pivots by Sean Ginwright. And in the chapter around moving from transactional to transformation, he shares a story of his friend Ben. And Ben was very active social justice, especially around the work of bringing awareness to police brutality. He had a personal experience. His brother was unfortunately murdered by a police officer, which drove his passion, obviously, to make a difference. But the story that Ginwright shares about his friend Ben is that Ben always was a very, he comes from church, so he's a very spiritually minded person and a very positive person. But as he started getting deeper and deeper in this justice work and noticed he was kind of always surrounded by other people doing this work, that his focus started to become on othering the police. So he made the conversation, the narrative in this group, as any group, right? We get together, the story starts spouting, started to make police the enemy. And he had an insight one day, like, oh, well, as much as we are making police the enemy, that's the same thing that they're doing to us, making us the enemy. We are othering. Anytime, so what does othering mean? Anytime we put someone, and especially a group, outside of our heart, thinking that they are separate from us because X, Y, and Z, or they are bad and we are good, all those judgments, that creates a separation. And what heals is oneness. What heals is love. Jen Wright says, we're trying to go about creating change that is transactional instead of transformative. This type of thinking assumes that somehow the current version of ourselves can actually give birth to something different in our society. Listen to that, right? We think somehow that the current version of ourselves can actually give birth to something different in our society. Sometimes leaders don't really understand what the real win would mean. We need to redefine what it means to win and present the version of ourselves we just can't see, but a deeper, more enlightened version of ourselves that we can begin to envision. So the idea that if we are showing up to do the work from the same state of awareness, consciousness, belief system, right, of separation, of lack that we embody right now, and that it somehow by just doing these things can shift, he's pointing out there's a fallacy in that, because what did I start with? Our experience in the world is an outpicturing of our collective consciousness, our beliefs, our thoughts, our ideas about ourselves and others. So Jen Wright really points us to the both and, doing the inner healing to notice where those blind spots are, what beliefs need to shift within ourselves, so then that can be reflected in the world. So we do our work, we notice, we show up, we organize, we do all the things, if that's what you're called to do, but we can't let ourselves get sucked into an energy or a narrative that is anything less than love and wholeness. We have to bring that vision. We have to be the ones to rise up, to call out, to notice. Like, hey, instead of putting so much focus on what's wrong, what can we do now? How can we have compassion for ourselves and others so that we can really make a difference? So we're seeing the culture clash happening around the world, so much unrest. And yet, I have to be hopeful, because we are also seeing things being revealed that we didn't know about, that were just kind of underlying ways of being. There was no one challenging certain things. And I do think that is one of the gifts of this internet and phones and things that, we don't only just see what the news chooses to tell us is the story. We're seeing individuals living in the war zone on TikTok, on their social media, sharing their personal experience. And it's often very different than what certain narratives may tell us. And this allows us to open our hearts and to realize, some things need to change. How do we shift and grow and know that no matter what is occurring in the world, there is something greater to be revealed? Our affirmation this morning, right? I have to believe that anything is possible. And often we hear this and we think, yes, I can, climb Mount Everest. We think, anything is possible can often be turned into some kind of personal feat. And I think that those stories are so brilliant because they inspire us, but it's not just to do the thing, to challenge ourselves physically to these great things. It is to remind us that we can do the impossible when it comes to healing and love and the changes we want to do in our world. Dr. King lends us this wisdom. We must combine the toughness of the serpent, the softness of a dove, and a tough mind and a tender heart. Do you hear all the paradox in that, right? We're embracing the paradox of that mama bear love. That's what I resonate with, right? The toughness and the softness, the tough mind and the tender heart. And I'd say tough mind, like the mind that is willing to challenge things and to look at things and to pay attention and not just let all the messages in the world sink in without question. And yet the tender heart, when we hear things like those facts about the prison industrial complex, the heart, allow it to break open our heart, not to take us out and think, well, this world is gone, but to break open our heart and say, anything is possible. Like, this isn't right. This isn't the love that I know. This isn't the God of my being that I experience in wholeness and truth and being. So therefore, something greater must be rising up for us to do and to really experience a collective grand rising. If you're, let's see, I'm going to give you a little resource too, but before that, one more other thing. Love, as we know, is another name for spirit. Love is the healer. So whatever we are experiencing in the moment, how can we see it as a holy moment of love, as an opportunity, even when it doesn't feel like that? Even in the discomfort and the discontent and the dis-ease, the energy, the seed of love resides within that. And as hard as a situation may feel, right, like our hardened heart or a hard situation, love can bust open to new ways and new things. So how do we tap into this energy in moments of struggle? We choose love over and over again. As spiritual beings, our job is not merely just to pray for someone's highest good, but also to look within and see the gifts and the opportunities and the wisdom, perhaps, that we have to share and what is seeking to be known for us in the world. So I want to end with this quote from Dr. King. The ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy. Yeah. So this week I encourage you to get curious about where you may be othering, to look within with grace and to see perhaps where you may have some unconscious bias. And here's that tool. Harvard University offers a free online tool called Project Implicit. We'll share that later in our group so you can look it up, Project Implicit. This is an opportunity to see, to know perhaps what you don't know, you don't know. And from there is a huge opportunity for healing and growth. So I invite you each day to begin again with a grand rising and to ask, what must I be, do, or become in order to build the beloved community and create a world that works for everyone? Are you in? Yeah. All right, let's pray it up. Taking a nice deep breath. So grateful right here, right now, to know that love simply is. It is eternal. It is ever present. Love is the healer. Love is the great force of the universe. So I know that love, freedom, peace is the true nature of life. It is that energy back of all things, having its way right here, right now, in, as, and through me. Love leads and guides the way. And knowing that there is one life, that we are all one, I know that love is who I am. I know that love is the very essence and nature and truth of each and every being. Even those who may deny this truth, it is still true. Love is who we are. So it is from this place of oneness that I speak this word now, knowing that love is guiding the way, that love is the energy for healing that lives within each of us as that field of pure potentiality, waiting for us to unleash the great power of the universe that lives within us in order to create the beloved community. How good it is to remember this truth and to know that in each and every moment we can choose again. When we forget, we can choose again. Love is always there and will always remind us of who we are. So I'm so grateful to know that right here, right now, love is showing up in all of the systems of our world. Love is showing up and moving through all of the leaders in our world. Political leaders, spiritual leaders, teachers, influencers, all people specifically of influence and power, right here, right now, by the power of this word, I claim are led by love. That the old way of being and doing, of self-serving, of ego, that those old ways we are seeing right here, right now, no longer serve the highest good of where this planet and this humanity and this time right here, right now, that no longer serves who we are becoming. So I know that love will guide the way, that peace is here now. Peace is here now. And I know that I am always guided for what is mine to do, be, and become, that I stay awake and aware, led by love. So with great gratitude for the fulfillment of this word, knowing it is already done in the mind of God, I simply let it go. I release it into the action of the law that always says yes. It says, yes, beloved, yes, 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 and it responds right here, right now, and a shift has occurred. Love is, and so it is. And so it is, yes.